Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Biblical again. Today is November 4th, about a month into the war between Israel and Gaza. So we're looking at 2023 as possibly the return of Christ, and also definitely as when we'd start to see an Islamic invasion of Israel. And I kind of gave up on this, but I have numerous videos about it over the years. Until October 7th this year, just a month ago, when Hamas launched its surprise attack from the Gaza Strip into Israel, and they took the lives of about 1,400 Israelis, 300 soldiers, a part of that, and also 260 people at a music festival. And it was a pretty horrific slaughter, actually. So you can understand why any nation would respond in a harsh way. But Israel's response has become the main story since then, and much of the world is forgetting the horrific attacks in the kibbutz here and focusing on what Israel's doing in the bombing campaign in Gaza. And if you watch the news, especially like Al Jazeera or something, you see constant coverage of various hospitals being bombed. And I believe Israel have admitted to some of these. Some of them have been proven to be either overblown or maybe overstated, but a lot of them have actually been proven to be genuine attacks on fighters, but it's resulted in many civilian casualties. And this has sparked the Islamic world to completely turn on Israel, which was expected, and we actually expected this year because we believe the Ezekiel 38 invasion mentioned here is actually a Turkish-led invasion in conjunction with Iran and Libya and various other Islamic nations that would eventually come down and attack Israel. So it would be Turkey in league with Iran and probably all the proxies in these various regions, and maybe even elements of Iraq and Syria, and definitely Lebanon, because you have Hezbollah, which yesterday had a big speech by a guy named Nasrallah, who's the leader, and he basically said we're with Gaza. He kind of downplayed their involvement in the beginning operation. He praised them, but since the 8th, they've been attacking the Israelis in the north, blowing up numerous tanks. And currently, Israel is also in a ground incursion into Gaza, and they basically surrounded the city of Gaza through here. And they're on this side and they're over here, and they're already fighting in there, and the fighting is actually pretty brutal. This is an Israeli vehicle being destroyed, but there's numerous videos coming out of basically Israeli tanks being blown up and things like that Hamas is releasing, and numerous videos of them taking out major vehicles. So this is not an easy campaign for Israel, though it looks like they have already split the city in half, split this region in half to surround the city. So they're going to focus here. And as that goes on and all the bombing campaigns inside grow worse, we've already seen numerous countries cut ties with Israel. We think Iran and Turkey are definitely involved in this, probably wanting their populations to turn on them. To cause them to call for them to invade Israel, because I believe that is in Erdogan of Turkey's mind, and definitely Iranian mindset, and they're in a league with each other. In fact, it was this week. They actually, I guess I didn't put it on here, but there was a little conference between one of the representatives of Iran and Erdogan. So that alliance is definitely there, and the Sunnis and Shias seem to be putting aside their grievances with each other to come and fight the great Satan, which is, well, I guess the United States, but also Israel in the region. The United States bases have been attacked in Iraq and Syria by numerous terrorist groups that are Iranian-backed, and the Houthis in Yemen down here, Iranian-backed, have declared war. They're a terrorist group that have declared war on Israel and shot some rockets this way that have been intercepted either by Saudi Arabia or Israel. And then America has its fleets here. But we are keeping our eye on Turkey, and it's interesting that today's headline is a Turkish headline, of course. There's been many, but where Erdogan is just calling Israel out left and right. And today it says he cut ties with Netanyahu and also recalled their ambassador. So this is starting to heat up. Erdogan has definitely given some radical speeches, as you saw in the last video. And there's this massive crowd, and he was basically calling out the West and saying, if you support Israel, you want another war between the Crescent and the Cross. And then these huge crowd is chanting, Turkish troops to Gaza, Turkish troops to Gaza. So I don't know if that was spontaneous or they were told to say it, but that's what the Islamic world wants, is somebody to come and save the Gazans here. And who better than Turkey in conjunction with Iran? Because right now, if they don't do anything, because of all the bombings and everything that's going on in Gaza, then it's going to look pretty bad. And it's going to look like more of the same. Like you guys always say, you're going to help, but you guys do nothing. But right now we have the very scenario from Ezekiel 38, which is actually no surprise based on the 2023 timeline, it's based off numbers in the Bible, based on when the abomination of desolation was set up. So Jesus talks about this in the Matthew 24, and it's in the what they call the Olivet Discourse, which is in Mark 13 and also Luke 21. But he says, therefore, when you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, standing in a holy place, whoever reads this, let him understand. So in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee. So he's saying that Daniel talks about this, and it's an abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. And then after this happens will be the Great Tribulation. Okay, and I believe that the Great Tribulation has taken place ever since the abomination of desolation was set up, which I believe is actually the Dome of the Rock. And if you look up the Dome of the Rock online, so you just go to your search engine. I'm going to Google. Okay, you just type in Dome of the Rock. And you get your Wikipedia going right here. Okay, we have this thing. It was completed in 691, 692. Okay, but there's some other information we need. Now, the construction, they say, started in 685, 686, while this guy, Al-Sayyid, says he holds that the commencement year was actually 688 AD. And that was the first one I noticed when I first looked it up. When was the Dome of the Rock set up on basically the Temple Mount, as opposed to reconstructed, Jewish temple, which wouldn't be accepted by God anyways. But anyway, so you had that number, so that means that Islam itself is the Antichrist system, and it set up something on the Temple Mount, which was the Dome of the Rock, and that just represents the replacement of, Christianity, the mercy of Christ, plus the truth that was brought to the world through the Jewish lineage that also birthed Christ, the people that God chose to reveal his truth through. So that fits the mold. And we go, so Jesus in Matthew, he said, go to Daniel. So let me just X this off. Okay, we'll go to Daniel. Okay, it talks about the abomination being set up, and then there's, I believe Islam set up a long time ago, and it talks about forces mustered by the Antichrist, and he places there, takes away the daily sacrifice, and sets up the abomination of desolation, which I believe are two connected events. Daily sacrifice, I believe, has something to do with Christ, taking away the mercy of Christ, and perhaps the idea of the crucifixion and the sacrifice there, and then the abomination of desolation being just the setting up of the Dome of the Rock, basically representing the replacement of the true faith. And then it talks about a great tribulation here, and I believe it lasts for a long time. And it even goes as far as to say he honors a God his fathers did not know, a God of war, essentially. So it connects it to Islam. And but if we go to the next chapter, that's Daniel 12. Daniel 12. Let me see if I can go down here. It gives us numbers. It says, and Daniel asks when the end is, and he said, and from the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days, okay? Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,390 and 95 or 35 days. And all you have to do with this is change days to years, which is what everybody does for the 70-week prophecy, but they haven't. A lot of people don't do for the numbers here. So if the abomination of desolation is set up in 688 A.D., you just add 1,335 days, but it's actually, if you just convert it to years, you come to this year. And what's supposed to happen this year? Well, we should be looking at what we're looking at today, which is a world turning fast against Israel, and not only Israel, but the people of Israel and the Jews, and probably in conjunction with probably Christians who support them, but also people that do not believe in Islam. But it seems mainly focused on Israel today. So in Daniel 11, it spoke about just at the end. So if you imagine that from the inception of Islam and the setting up of the Dome of the Rock, there's been numerous people that have been in charge of Islam. You had the Umayyads to the Abbasids to the Ottomans. Okay, then you had the Ottomans go away 100 years ago exactly, basically last week, when Turkey, it became the nation of Turkey 100 years ago. So last week, Turkey celebrated their 100-year anniversary by having this massive 100-ship go through their strait. But this also does a job of flexing and showing that they are a powerhouse, because a few days previous, we had Erdogan give this speech and basically call Israel out and say that we're ready. We're not cowards anymore. We are still what we once were, which was basically the Islamic Empire. So we're at this time. So Daniel also speaks about the end. It just says at the time of the end, the king of the south will attack him, referring to the king of the north, which is basically Turkey. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and many ships, and enter into the countries, and overwhelm them, and pass through. Even the glorious land, many countries are overthrown, but Edom, Moab, the prominent people of Ammon, these escape, which is Jordan, which today is actually kind of seems to be a reasonable player, as far as they kind of say Israel has a right to defend itself, but nonetheless, what's going on in Gaza cannot stand. So they're almost a neutral party. And he says about the king of the north, which I believe is Turkey, and this Islamic alliance we'll talk about, he shall stretch out his hand against the countries. The land of Egypt shall not escape. So that would be the king of the south, potentially. And he shall have power over the treasuries, the silver, the gold of Egypt, and also the Libyans and Ethiopians, which is, I guess, Ethiopians would be northern Sudan, from what I've heard, based, from back in the day it was called this. But news from the east and north shall trouble him, and he shall go and destroy many and annihilate many. And he shall plant tents of his place between the seas and the glorious land, yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. Okay, we have this. But basically, the king of the north comes down. It says the king of the south strikes first, and I'm thinking that that's probably Egypt, which is in an interesting situation today as well, because Egypt, right here, especially Sinai, is bordering Gaza, and they are not really, they're letting some people out, like some American citizens and people that are injured, but they don't really want to bring a bunch of Gazans in here, because they say, why doesn't Israel take them? Because, we have enough problems of our own. But the population, the Islamic populations are all over the world, are calling for the Islamic leaders to do something, So Israel's had numerous revolutions, so I've heard a bunch of commentators suggest that maybe Egypt might do something, which would fit that Daniel 11, if that indeed is about this end times prophecy of the king of the south coming up first. But it says to strike the king of the north. But we do have some interesting buildups, because on the Sinai there's a massive buildup of Israeli forces as well, of Egyptian forces on the border there. So, if they feel enough pressure, it's possible they do something. But that is a scenario as well, just to keep an eye on. But the main thing we're looking for, and the main indicator, the main verses that we're looking event is the Islamic invasion led by Turkey against Israel. And this is what we see building up today. And we just have to simply go to Ezekiel 38, which we talked about in the last video. It says, now the word of the Lord came against me, saying, Son of God, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, thus says the Lord, behold, I am against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. Now people say Rosh is Russia, but Meshach and Tubal for sure is Turkey. So it seems to me the king of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal would have to be Turkish. So Rosh is probably somewhere related to Turkey, and Gog is the title of the ruler who leads this whole coalition, which has, it says, I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and lead you out with all your armies, horses and horsemen, splendidly colored, and all these people are coming. Also with Persia, so Iran and Turkey and Ethiopia again, and Libya, like it said in Daniel, which is, again, northern Sudan and Libya. They're with them, and all these guys from Gomer and the troops of Togomor from the far north. So this is also in Turkey. So they're from the far north. So the north, the far north here is Turkey. Okay? So that's how you know the king of the north is Turkish, that we saw in Daniel. So it says the hooks are in their jaws. So it seems if this is today, if this 2023 number is true, which this is the kind of thing we'd be looking for, right? We'd be looking for an Islamic alliance here, because that's what they are today. They have a god of war and all that. This alliance today, which is also a resurgence of the Islamic Empire idea, or it might as well be, and potentially with Erdogan at the lead as the revitalized Islamic ruler, leading them as Gog, because they're already, they're already, Iran is definitely in league with this Turkish ruler today, in their alliance against Israel. All we'd be looking for is this to happen, and 2023 seems highly possible. Now, there's only a couple, there's like 2 months here. Could this happen within 2 months? I think it may be possible based off the actions on October 7th, where Hamas surprised Israel and caused that much catastrophe, but how much more could Turkey, one of the largest armies in NATO, in league with Iran and all their proxies here, and Hezbollah, which just threatened all the United States bases here, in conjunction with every Islamic country that wants to fight, how unreasonable is it for it to happen in a very short period of time with also drone technology, which both Iran and Turkey are basically masters of. In fact, both Iran and Turkey send drones over to the war in Ukraine, which is currently going on. The Iran sends them to Russia, and Turkey sends them to Ukraine, and they also send them to Azerbaijan to fight the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, which was just taken recently by the Azerbaijanis in Turkey, who are allied to Turkey. The Christian Armenians had an exodus basically of Nagorno-Karabakh. So it's basically set up for this to happen, and we just keep every day. There's a new story where it keeps more people are turning against Israel, more people are protesting Israel, more people are turning against the Jews, and literally there's so much anti-Semitism all of a sudden. It just seems like almost out of the blue. Even myself was almost caught off guard by this, because I almost gave up on this whole concept of this 2023 idea. And that's not the only number. You can do that with, in Revelation, we talk about, let me just, in Luke, it talks again about the setting up of the abomination of desolation. And here it caused Jerusalem to be surrounded by armies. No, that's desolation is near. And what I believe is, Jerusalem was inhabited by Jews for a long time, but then when Islam came and set up the temple, the Temple Mount as Islamic, that's when you had your major diaspora. And it wasn't until 1948 that the Jews actually returned here in a big way, and Israel was born again, which is significant, because here we see, it gives a little more, story here is about the Jews. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive into the nations, and Israel was all over the world until World War II, and Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Okay, Revelation also gets into this as well in 11 here. He says, John saw this. He says, then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood, said, rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there, but leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. Okay, this whole idea of the time of the Gentiles, which was also in Luke, here, the Gentiles will trample it until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. So it says that is a 42-month period of time right here. But is also, I think that's still, and I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. 42 months is 1,260 days, but maybe it's something else here. But it definitely gives that number. And I believe the two prophets, since it says olive trees and lampstands, is just the church in Israel. They prophesy clothed in sackcloth, which is a sign of mourning. So once Islam came in here, basically the Jews and Christians were in mourning because this thing was taking over the whole planet, basically, and replacing the truth. But 1,000 after the Dome of the Rock was set up, so that would be the Great Tribulation. So Dome of the Rock set up the Great Tribulation, but it says how long is Israel basically, the time of the Gentiles going on, and Israel basically scattered to the wind, to the world. It says 1,260 days, but you just convert it to years. Boom, 1948. So time of the Gentiles is over. They're back in the land. There's other numbers, which we've gone over in the previous thing, but it all lines up to something with Israel, and especially this 688 plus the final number in Daniel, 1,335 days. Boom, 2023, just when you'd expect the Ezekiel 38 lineup of nations getting ready to come down against an Israel, which is back from desolation. See, it says he comes against the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. So this happens when Israel is no longer desolate, when it is here today in this state. Now it's, according to Ezekiel 38 and even Romans 11, it talks about this again, this time of the Gentiles. It says, don't be arrogant. Basically causes them to stumble until the time of the Gentiles. It says, until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved. As written, the deliverer will come out of Zion. He will turn away the ungodliness of Jacob, so his covenant is with them. So, for he committed them to disobedience, that he might have mercy on all, but his promises are irrevocable. So this is going to be quite the thing to see. So you don't want to really be arrogant against Israel, which unfortunately, because of the Islamic faith and prophecies, the Islamic nations are going to come against Israel in the Ezekiel 38 invasion and the end of Daniel 11. And they're going to look like they're winning for a time. I don't know how long this lasts. If it is truly this year, then this is going to be a very short, horrific event culminating in what Daniel seems to allude to the second coming of Christ, or the first resurrection, which is referred into, which you could read about in Revelation and everything. But essentially, it's, the Lord coming with 10,000s of his holy ones with him, which would be apparently the church with him, to come and execute judgment and all that kind of thing against the nations here, and prove he is the true God of the world, but also to prove to Israel that Jesus, he was their Messiah, and he's going to forgive them, apparently, in this time, after the time of the Gentiles. So it does not seem to be the right thing to boast against Israel, even though basically those hooks are in the jaws right now, and everything that Israel does here will cause the Islamic world to seethe. If not, maybe there's a cunning plan between Iran and Turkey based off Ezekiel 38, where they knew this was going to happen based off what the Hamas did on October 7th, which was so horrific that any nation would respond. So keep these things in mind. I'm just going to keep updates, but it's getting a little hard to keep track of all it with all the different bombings and things like this darn ad. But basically, it's just getting intense. Like, you go to Drudge every day, it starts looking more and more like the invasion of Israel is about to happen. The U.S. and the bunch of AntiSemitism stuff happening, but you're having this Gog-like leader cutting ties all of a sudden, talking like he's going to take back, the mantle of the Islamic world, and he's already proven that he has that desire just by how he spoke on the internet. And the war is brutal in Israel. But
you can hear that gunfire in the.
So the time is short for them to finish this operation in Gaza before the whole world just finally goes for it and Turkey leads this Islamic invasion. And again, if this number is correct, which is amazing that this year is the nations are basically in like a switch all of a sudden right after October 7th, going to where this scenario is like highly probable. All of a sudden, it happened to be. It didn't happen last year. There was something kind of going on in 2021, but it got resolved. But this year, all of the Islamic world is turning against him with a power structure that could do something, and the whole world is slowly turning on Israel. So keep an eye out, and don't forget, do the calculations yourself. There's no fudging any numbers. It just seems to be a really simple thing, and you happen to get this number from the Dome of the Rock. So I'll keep you guys updated, but that's what I wanted to say for now, and I thank you for listening.